This is the Yashica T5, and today we're going to find out if it's hype or if it's a load of crap. Now, this camera is about as simple as it gets. There's almost nothing on it. There's a tiny little tripod stand or 1/4" thread. You can change the settings to flash on, flash off, infinity focus, no red eye, and then finally auto settings, which kind of leave it on most of the time, to be honest. There's also a timer, a 10-second timer. I haven't really used that at all. I guess it's kind of like a party camera, it feels like a camera that you use with your friends. And I can't still work out, after owning it over a year, if I like this camera. It's got some great features, pretty much just the lens. It's super simple, and that's kind of the problem. It's so simple you can't change the exposure at all unless you hack the DX on a cartridge, and that takes a while. So we'll go through this video and see the results, and maybe at the end decide if I want to keep this or sell this. Loaded it up with some 500T pushed 1-stop because annoyingly with this camera there's no exposure compensation. H. Now, by pushing this film 1-stop, I tried to cover the fact that this camera only has a DX reader and you cannot change the ISO settings. So if the lighting's tricky, it tends to go for the highlights and underexpose the image a little bit. One of my favourite features on this T5 is this so-called super scope, which is a pretty nerdy name, but it's really good for street photography. You don't have to look for that little rangefinder, and it's kind of over the lens, so you get a little bit closer to the composition you want. The lighting, I will say, was not particularly impressive this trip. It was really just overcast and boring, but tried to make the most of it and went out for some little walks with it. The great thing is this camera is super pocketable and weatherproof, which was one of my thoughts going into this trip, was that probably going to rain quite a lot. It didn't really, but it's nice to know that the camera will be fine. Now, the main reason for this camera being so hyped is the lens. It's a super sharp Carl Zeiss lens that fits into this tiny little point and shoot, and it does create some great images when the exposure's right. The contrast is really good. You don't really have to touch these images much. I mean, it's 500T, so warm it up a little bit and balance it a bit better for daylight, but it does create some super contrasty, beautiful images. I wanted to see how the apparent micro contrast with the Yashica T5 would show up with this nice colourful roof and then the darks and lights. I'm pushing 500T, so we'll see. Should be more contrasty. Did actually like these images. I think on overcast days, bright sunny days, you can get some great shots as long as the lighting's pretty even. Next, I thought try this camera inside to show you how I think it performs best. I really like these images here. Think of this church. Pushed 1-stop to kind of avoid any crushed shadows, and the flash is super powerful, so you can get loads of stuff in. Didn't use the flash here because I was in a church and not meant to really, but I do use it later, and it is powerful and quite impressive. Where I wouldn't use this camera is definitely here. I mean, landscape's not its strongest point, but portability, walking around a city, pretty perfect. The lens is a 35mm f3.5, so not exactly the widest, but good for everyday shooting. which is what this camera's really for, and not the best bokeh, but still produces some great portraits. We moved on and I decided to take a photo of this tram that was no longer in use and turned into a bar, and I think it shows how powerful that little compact flash is. Really gets quite a lot in. Moving on to another bar. It was kind of weirdly designed, but quite a fun little place, and again that flash is insanely powerful. You can see here how colourful actually the place was, not on the video because it was so dark. To conclude, these are some of my favourite images that I took this trip, and you know, it did kind of make me like it more. It's just so unobtrusive and there that you don't really have to worry about anything, any settings. It's a blessing and it's also a curse, especially with the ISO. But I do think that contrast does kind of ring true to what it says, but you could probably get this in post. However, also saying that, the point of film to me is not too much to touch it in post. Obviously do a fair bit, but nothing crazy. And the baked in look is pretty unique, I think, to this camera. Okay, concluding the video, the fact that it's weather sealed is a massive bonus. Makes me pretty confident taking this many places, and I have to be fair, its size is another major factor that I love. The lens I do think is insane for a point and shoot, but saying that, £500 for this camera I don't think would ever be worth it. Buy a Nikon F2 and you'll get better results. However, I did buy this for pretty cheap. I bought this for £220, and I think for that much, the way point and shoots are going at the moment, it's probably worth keeping. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you think it is worth keeping. Personally, I think I'm going to keep it, but I'll take it on one more trip and that'll be the deciding factor.